So Gamescom Opening Night Live 2025 has ended, and we got some really cool trailers for Onimusha Way of the Sword, Ghost of Yōtei, and Resident Evil Requiem. So let's check out those trailers and to break down what we saw. Alright, so starting off first, we have Capcom and Square Enix collaborating once again with Monster Hunter Wilds and Final Fantasy XIV. This is a throwback to Monster Hunter World's collaboration with Final Fantasy XIV, where they had that big behemoth that was a huge boss fight event. It was super cool, and now they're back at it, adding content to both games. So first off, Monster Hunter is going to be getting chocobos as mounts, and they will also be getting Omega as the big boss event. So that should be pretty difficult. Omega is historically an incredibly difficult boss in all of the Final Fantasies, so I'm pretty sure this is going to be a really big fight that's going to probably kick some butts, so that's super cool. But Final Fantasy XIV will also be getting Monster Hunter content in the form of Sacrets as mounts and their own boss battle with a huge monster whose name I'm forgetting. But it's super cool to see these two companies collaborating. They're two of my favorite gaming developers that I grew up playing their games. I really love them. So the fact that they can get together and collaborate on Monster Hunter and Final Fantasy XIV, super cool. I don't play 14, but the fact that the collaboration is happening, and it kind of makes me hope that one day we could get a Capcom developed Final Fantasy fighting game, because that would be pretty sick. Up next, we have Onimusha Way of the Sword, which I am so excited for. If you haven't seen my past Onimusha videos, I'm a huge fan. I grew up playing these games as a kid, and for the longest time, I thought, well, Onimusha is dead. It's never coming back. It was nice while it lasted until they revealed Way of the Sword. Now, this new trailer is called The Experiments, and I love it because it focuses heavily on the horror aspect of Onimusha. The previous trailers really focused on the samurai action, the combat, which looks like it's going to be really fun, but you don't have Onimusha without that cool blend of horror and samurai action. And this trailer introduces us to one of the new enemies known as Dokyo. And she's kind of like your run-of-the-mill, maybe Genma scientist like we've seen in previous Onimusha games. She has a laboratory underground where she creates all of these really sick and twisted experiments that just get really gnarly. And one of her experiments seems to be to take the bodies, perhaps, of dead samurai and twist them into these Genma creations. And we see Musashi fighting a really big, brutish-looking samurai. He's got this cool demonic orange glowing sword. He manages to knock Musashi down, and then he's about to impale him. So that's going to be one of the newer brute enemy types, and we've seen that type of enemy type in previous Onimushas, the bigger, stronger, lumbering kind of guys that you really kind of have to focus down in order to beat. We are also introduced to a new enemy type known as Chijiko. Now, these tentacle-faced monsters remind me of the tentacle monsters from the first Onimusha game. They were these really ugly, blobby creatures that could stick their tentacles into the ground and hit you wherever you were. They were incredibly annoying. And when you try to slice them down, sometimes they could multiply. So they were a really big hassle to fight. You had to be really smart about how you approach them. And these Chijiko really remind me of those guys because they do have those big tentacle attacks, but we also see them split into two different forms, creating a bigger headache for Musashi. We see Musashi battling more Genma foot soldiers, and what's super cool is that they do show us a very quick shot of the iconic Isen attacks from previous Onimushas, and if you forgot what those are, they're essentially deadly counterattacks. In previous Onimusha games, if you timed it just right and were surrounded by a group of enemies, you could cut down every enemy one by one. It's super cool. They only show a brief instance of it here, but it's great to have it back. The Isen attacks, again, are a pretty core element of the combat of Onimusha, so to see it make a return and see it look flashy and cool, I love it. We also see the Genma foot soldiers knock Musashi down and attempt to suck the souls out of his Oni gauntlet. We also see the appearance of 2 new weapons for Musashi. One seems to be a mystical bow and arrow, which we see him fire at an exploding red barrel. You gotta have an exploding red barrel in your game, especially action games. It's just cool. It needs to be there, so that's pretty sick. We also see him wielding a double-bladed pole arm. Now, I don't know what the name of this weapon would be, but it's almost like a double-bladed naginata. And we see Musashi bust it out and do some cool spins with it, leading to what I'm assuming is the elemental attack of wind, because we see Musashi form a pretty big circle of wind, almost like a tornado around him, which wipes out all of the enemies and then has one final big burst attack. So that looks like it's going to be really fun to use. And again, if you haven't seen my previous Onimusha videos, Musashi will be only using his katana for the game. However, he will have moments where he can use magic to bust out these extra weapons. So much like how the original games gave you multiple weapons with different magic attacks, those have been replaced in favor of having the magic attacks bring out the weapon. So it's a really cool special attack that you can bust out assuming you have the magic power. And it seems like Musashi is going to get a nice variety of those extra special weapons that he can use. There's also the introduction of a newer enemy. This could be a sub-boss or a recurring boss, but it's called the New Way, and it seems to be lightning based. We see a section where Musashi is running in a courtyard trying to dodge lightning strikes, eventually finding the New Way and doing combat with it. So it looks pretty cool. It's got a massive tail. Again, I think the combat in this game is going to be really, really satisfying, especially timing those Isen attacks, but also the parry mechanics. I think that's going to be a really strong core concept to what this game's gameplay is going to be. And again, this is not a Souls-like, and the developers themselves have said in a previous interview that they didn't pay any attention to any Souls games when they were creating the combat for this game. It is very much distinctively going to be Capcom's take on a modern day Onimusha. And again, the more you see this combat, the more I went back and played the older Onimushas again recently, the more I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. It's the old combat from the previous Onimushas just brought to modern day, cleaned up with a few more mechanics added in. So if you're worried about it being a Souls-like, don't worry. It is not a Souls-like, thankfully. And then the very end of the trailer, we see in classic fashion, it wouldn't be Onimusha without some sort of death trap. We see Musashi in a room with a very massive, sharp fan on the ceiling, and I'm assuming that fan is going to get lower and lower until we stop it. So again, it's cool to bring back some of those death trap puzzles. Hopefully they're not super frustrating like they were in the first Onimusha. That water puzzle in particular made a lot of people pull their hair out, but it makes me wonder what other traps they're going to have in this game. But either way, Onimusha shaping up to be excellent. The samurai action with the horror elements, the special weapons that you're going to be able to bust out, the combat just looks so well done and polished. I'm just hoping that maybe with the next trailer, whenever that may be, maybe the Game Awards or Tokyo Game Show, hopefully we can get a firm release date. It would be really nice to know when this game is going to come out, other than just 2026. Up next, we have Silent Hill F. Now, I am new to the Silent Hill franchise. I jumped on last year with Silent Hill 2 Remake, and I loved that game. It was my runner-up for Game of the Year, just behind Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It was that good. So now you show me Silent Hill F, which is taking things in a slightly different direction and rooting it more back in Japan, which is super cool. But that's what also makes it interesting, is that it's not taking place within the town of Silent Hill, it's in Japan. But the idea that the developers were going for was that the idea of Silent Hill can kind of happen anywhere. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with this game's story. It looks very grotesque. We got to see some of the combat stuff, but the main reason I wanted to bring up this game is A, I'm excited for it, but B, they announced that the lead character is going to be voiced by none other than Suzy Young, who many of us know as the voice of Yuffie in the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. So I was already interested in this game, but you throw Suzy in there and now you got me hook, line, and sinker. She's still very new to voice acting, but she has proven that she is a very talented actress, and it's so cool to see her get all of these roles over the years, starting with Yuffie. She was the voice of the Invisible Woman in Marvel Rivals. She's now voicing the character in Silent Hill F. She's done tons of other roles too, so it's super cool to see her just kind of get all these roles and just do an incredible job. Up next, we had one of my most anticipated games, potentially my most anticipated game of the year, and that is Ghost of Yotei with a brand new trailer labeled Song of Vengeance. Now, I was kind of surprised that Ghost of Yotei showed up at ONL because they've pretty much shown us a ton of this game already. We've gotten some fantastic trailers, we got that incredible 20-minute state of play deep dive on the gameplay mechanics, the story, how exploration is going to work. So I was surprised that it showed up here because I'm like, well, what more could they even show off? And they show off more of the story aspects for Atsu. And with this trailer in particular, it is focusing on the night that her family was murdered. We see flashbacks of her mother being murked, her father, everybody, the house is burning, it's a mess. We also see Atsu come across one of the Yotei 6 members in the snake. Now, we've seen this in previous trailers, but based on how things are playing out here, it looks like she finds the snake, he dismisses her, bad move on his part. She then sets his home on fire to get his attention, which leads to the fight. And we do see a shot where Atsu's on the ground stabbing the snake and blood is covering her. So obviously the dude's gonna get taken out, but it's cool to see the events that lead up to that moment. We also see Atsu find what I'm assuming is the leader of the Yotei 6 in Lord Saito, and this dude is shook. He's like, hang on, you're the young girl that we stabbed and stuck to a tree all those years ago? How did you survive? And Atsu, being the badass that she is, straight up lets him know that she survived because the thought of killing him is what kept pushing her. And the rest of the trailer is mostly combat stuff. We see some big battles playing out. We see more footage of snow combat. We've got those enemies that again can hide in the snow and ambush you at the last second, which is pretty cool, kind of scary, but it seems like a really fun mechanic to keep the player on their toes, because now you're not just going to be wandering the beautiful snow, you now got to be worried about these guys who are somehow hiding in the snow and not freezing to death before they jump out and try to attack you. And then we have one of my favorite shots of the trailer, the dog. The wolf bites a guy in the arm, holds him in place as Atsu then lunges forward and slices the guy in the chest. So we're gonna have cool finishers with our wolf companion. It's not just the wolf attacking on its own or doing the standoffs. Seemingly he's gonna be able to aid us in battle and pin enemies down so we can then jump them, which looks insane. I can't wait already. And then of course we have tons of wonderful shots of the environment, Atsu traversing them. The game is going to look incredible. I'm very excited to see how it looks and performs on a PS5 Pro. They have yet to give us those details, but they will come at a later date, which should be soon. The game is 6 weeks away, which sounds insane, but yes, it's right around the corner. But then they ended the trailer with a surprise, and what do you know? Ghost of Yotei Legends mode will be hitting next year for free. Yes, it's nice. For the price of free $99, you'll be able to play the new Legends mode, which is super exciting. I played a decent amount of Legends mode on Tsushima. It was so much fun picking my class, working together with other people with a really fun combat system. So I'm curious to see how the combat system, since it's now evolved, is going to handle 4-player co-op. Will we still have our respective classes that have their own unique weapon? Will those classes have access to other weapons? It'll be interesting to see how they handle it, but there also, again, will be the 2-player co-op missions in there as well. So you got the co-op, and then you got the survival mode with 4 players, which is super sick. I cannot wait. And it's free, and it's going to be so much fun. And last but not least, we have Resident Evil Requiem in a very teasery trailer, which just left me wanting so much more. Now this one opens up and seems to focus on the events leading up to the death of Alyssa Ashcroft, who again you may remember from Resident Evil Outbreak. It's a dark and stormy night. She's in a hotel room with her daughter Grace, and this is a much younger version of Grace. I'm assuming she's probably a teenager or maybe like late teens, early 20s, working on something. She's super absorbed in her laptop, kind of snippy with her mom, which is unfortunate, until the phone rings. Alyssa asks her to answer the phone. Grace grabs it. There's a voice that says Mrs. Ashcroft. Grace replies with yes, and then they hang up, and a couple of seconds later, the hotel that they're in loses power. This immediately triggers Alyssa to realize that something is wrong, and she says to herself, they're coming. So whoever maybe she's investigating has found her. Maybe she's looking into a cult, we don't know, but they have found the location of Alyssa and Grace, and now they're coming after them. They do attempt to leave, and they end up running into the hotel manager, who gets murked by the dude in the black hood. So he ain't gonna be in Rush Hour 3. They manage to run and escape the hooded figure. Grace seems to have a panic attack, which Alyssa has to calm her down from. And there's a really beautiful but sad exchange between Alyssa and Grace, where Alyssa is seemingly telling Grace how proud of her she is, but also kind of hinting at this is a goodbye, because she doesn't know what's going to happen. Now, as they are getting ready to head to the exit, Grace heads there first, and as she turns around, we can briefly see what looks to be the hooded man and his knife headed towards Alyssa's head, possibly neck. So we hear the squishy sounds. It sounds like that is the moment that Alyssa unfortunately gets murdered by whoever is in that black wardrobe. I've seen some people speculate, what if it's Leon? We have no idea. It's just a really sick looking guy who is after Alyssa for some reason. It could be the person that she's investigating. Now, even though it was a very short teaser, it did its job. It makes me even more intrigued in the story, with the characters, what the heck is going on. Now, one of the things I really love about this trailer is that it really kind of explains why Grace is the way that she is as an adult. She's still absorbed in her work, working at the FBI, but she's incredibly jumpy. She gets startled very easily. And it looks like the events of that night where she lost her mom are going to have a pretty big effect on her and have massive trauma leading forward, leading her to be a little bit more jumpy and scared. And the fact that she's going to have to go back to Raccoon City at the location where her mother was murdered is going to make things even tougher for her. So it's a really great setup for the character of Grace. And one of the other things that I was really impressed by is visually, this game looks insane. The cutscenes are beautiful. The in-game stuff is beautiful. One of the things that really kind of took me aback was the transition from cutscene to gameplay being buttery smooth. You literally are running with Alyssa, and then you see the prompt come up that says follow mom, and then you head out into the main area of the hotel, and that's when they run into who I'm assuming is the hotel manager before he eventually gets stabbed in the neck. So the intrigue and the mystery is there. It's being set up. We don't know whose voice that was on the phone asking for Miss Ashcroft. We don't know who this hooded man is. We don't know what Alyssa was investigating, but it's pretty clear that Grace is going to have to pick up where her mother left off. And of course, we're still awaiting Leon S. Kennedy, should he be in the game. So with that being said, that is the video recapping some of the stuff that stood out to me from ONL 2025. I can't wait, man. 2026 is going to be a loaded year for games. We've got Resident Evil Requiem hitting in February. We don't know what the date of Onimusha is going to be. There's still Pragmata. There's Ghost of Yotei, Silent Hill F coming out this year. It's going to be a very busy year plus for gaming, which is, always a good thing. But with that being said, I am Curious Corduroy. Let me know in the comments down below what impressed you the most from ONL 2025. And if you made it this far, it helps out a bunch if you like and subscribe. Liking really does go a long way to help out the video and the channel. It gets it out there, lets YouTube know, hey, this is cool, I like it, more people should see it, and it's always greatly appreciated by me. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.